And at one point somebody suggested that we do an excursion across the field here. So we drove down, actually from here through Stevenson, and then drove all the way out and over the thing. And just as we were about to pull back onto Hager Drive, the campus police was coming up the road. And so there was that. Well, Nick was just on his way up to campus and saw this and came over and basically interceded. And he just kind of waved the guy off and turned around and looked at me. And he had this thing that whenever I do something bad, which wasn't that uncommon, he would call me dummy. And that burned. That really burned worse than any kind of detention or other kind of punishment he might have given. You know, I think really Nick embodied the spirit of this campus in the days. I went here from 72 to 77. In that, you know, I came here because I wanted to learn to think for myself, to not be told what to know about anything. And Nick encouraged personal responsibility. The only other short story is that probably the worst single thing I did was go to a party once and get very, very drunk with a couple of female students. And one of them got so drunk, in fact, that when I was bringing her back to the dorms here at Stevenson, I had to carry her because she passed out basically in the car. And in the process of walking her back to her dorm room, she vomited all over me. And I was wearing a fringe leather jacket and lederhosen, which was pretty much my uniform at the time. Anyway, I thought I was going to make it free and clear at least and not be discovered. And I turned the corner right by the library and almost literally ran right into Nick, who had a flashlight, and immediately turned it on. And he just goes, "Holy shit, this ought to be really good." Anyway, love you, Nick, miss you. You are Stevenson College, and we'll always remember you.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Mike Weber. I want to pay my respects to Beth Vecchione, Nick's youngest daughter, who is sitting at the back, with Nina and with his grandson Josh. And I'm sure it means a great deal to them, as it does to me, that you're all here today. Nick and I became friends when I was a graduate student here. And I moved into the dorms as a preceptor. So Nick and I first met in 1984. And I also then became a night proctor, working with Nick on many adventures and projects. And I am the person who was married to the statue. It's difficult for me to talk about Nick. This is the first time I have ever been in Santa Cruz where Nick Vecchione is not present. And today, driving in, it was just incredibly overwhelming to go to the restaurants that we used to hang out in, to see old friends, to walk around Stevenson, to feel his spirit, but not to be able to access his wonderful body, his humor, his advice. Nick and I were friends for ever since I can remember my arrival in the United States. We crossed generations. He was, as Tim has indicated, so much older than me. His experiences of the Depression, of war, was similar to some of my grandfathers from Wales. His working class roots in Brooklyn very resonated with me as a graduate student and as a Welshman. I was one of the first in my family to graduate college. I was one of the first to finish high school. And so with Nick, you felt a kindred spirit. And his deep and abiding friendship over the years was a mainstay of my life. I can't recall a single major decision of the last 30 years that I have not talked over with Nick. And so I feel a little adrift these days. Since his death at the end of February, there have been one or two things I've cheerfully would have picked up the phone and said, "Nick, what do you think?" And he'd, "Mikey, how are you?" And we would have launched into conversation. My relationship with him was special. I think friendship is one of the most sacred things that we're given, and particularly for men across a generational divide, to find friendship that's both intimate, humorous, comradely, supportive is very, very rare in life. And so it was one of the great joys to be with him, both at Stevenson and subsequently. And I always made an effort over the last 20 years to come down to see him. I saw him a matter of hours before he died, and was able to tell him how I felt about him, what he meant to me. And I'm very glad that I had that opportunity to do so. I told him about a concert that I'd been to see featuring George Gershwin's piano concerto, which I know he would have loved. But I also want to say something that struck me from reading an essay called Free Men by Bertrand Russell. And I just wanted to end by giving you this quote, because for me, it kind of sums up both my relationship with Nick, the great affection that I had for him, the wonderful things that he did for me, along with many others. We are all touched, I think, by people at various points in our lives. People who give you advice, who mentor you, and I've been extremely fortunate in my time at Stevenson to be helped by Nick Vecchione and to be intellectually mentored by my good friend Bill Domhoff. And I think that is something that, as a professor at the University of San Francisco and now as the Vice Provost of Academic Affairs, something that I try to pass on to students and faculty that I come into contact with as well. So Russell wrote this essay, Free Men, in 1903, and although I don't agree with parts of it, this particular part touched me. One by one, our comrades vanished from our sight, seized by the silent orders of omnipotent death. Very brief is the time we can help them, but it is ours to shine sunshine on their path, to lighten their sorrows with the balm of sympathy, to give the pure joy of a never-tiring affection, to strengthen wavering courage, to instill faith in the hours of despair. Do not weigh in the scales their merits or demerits, but think only of their need, the sorrows, the difficulties, and perhaps the blindnesses. Remember that they are fellow sufferers in the darkness. When their day is over, be it ours to feel that where they suffered, where they failed, no deed of ours was the cause. But wherever a spark of the divine fire kindled in their hearts, we were ready with encouragement, with sympathy, with brave words in which high courage glowed. Rest in peace, my dear friend. I will never forget you.
I was provost in the early 80s and did a number of really stupid things. One of them had to do with Nick. Nick was a preceptor at the time and living in the preceptor's house 1. Some of you may know, may all of you know, that in the 8 dormitories that we have, the living facilities for the preceptors, in 7 of them, are modest apartments in the dormitory itself. If you don't know this, check it out. The preceptor's house for College 1 is a separate unit. I'd probably sell for $500,000 these days at Santa Cruz. And Nick was in that house. We were trying with some success to have faculty members as preceptors. There was a faculty member who, honestly, whose name I forget, was married, and I decided, arbitrarily, that it would make much more sense for Nick to move into one of the apartments and the family into the housing unit. So I asked, that is to say, I told Nick that he was going to move. I don't recall any bit of annoyance on Nick's part, but he must have been totally pissed. He should have been. So all I'm going to say is, Nick, I know you're here somewhere. I want to say honestly, in some ways, I probably did the right thing, as economists tend to be overly rational, but it really was the wrong thing, and I'd like you to forgive me. I hope you will.
I wish I was up here under happier circumstances. My name is Josh Safran, class of 91. Well, I started in 87. I live in dorm 6, next to Nick. So if anybody knows this apartment that you forced him to, and I talked to him about this last year when I saw him, and he was pissed at you about this. Nick very quickly became a part of our lives. We saw him almost every night when he came home, usually for a break around midnight, and usually around 4 a.m. when he would close in for the night. Some of us would be hanging out, smoking cigarettes, maybe we were studying, but there was a calm and sort of a serene feeling when you saw Nick coming home. And you knew the term of endearment that you would get from him. Anyone? Asshole. Asshole. A very personal story, and I don't want to make this about me, it's about all of us. I think he gave all of us a second chance when we needed it. And my story took place right over there when I started a food fight the first week of school when I was a freshman. And it started here and it made its way that way. I went back to my room thinking really nothing of it. And about 25 minutes after the event, Nick was in my doorway and he threw my door open. He said, "Asshole!" And it was an enlightening moment for me because it was my second chance. And his point was, don't do stuff like that. It's not worth it. And I just got you out of trouble. And it wasn't the first time he did it for me, and I know it wasn't the first time for everybody else. The fact that all of us are here today, you must think that for every one person that's sitting here in this audience, there must be 10, 20, 100 people that would probably be here today if they could have been here today. I can't think of a better way to send Nick off than to think of how all of us were given that second chance, and to think now maybe we'll give other people second chances, and perhaps that's the best way to carry on his legacy. Rest in peace, Nick. We miss you.
I didn't come to this school. Mrs. Weber, and I don't know if you knew about this, maybe you know they had a future Mrs. Weber committee. So here I am. Thank you very much. Nick, I met him a few months before I married Michael, and he went to our wedding, and he came to our table and said, well, we have to close, sorry, my English is not my first level. We have to end the future Mrs. Weber committee because now, you know, you are Mrs. Weber. And he gave me this big letter that I shouldn't come and brought with me. But he was fantastic that day, and every year we used to come like 3-4 times a year to see him. He was great to me, and every time we came here, we used to pick him up and go and have dinner with him. And I will just sit there and see Michael and Nick talk about you all the time. He was always talking all the stories, and they laughed for all the time, and he was great. Until the day I became a grandmother, he went to his house, and we knocked at the door, and he always say, "Hey," and "Hello," and say, "How are you, Grandma?" And I said, "No, this doesn't sound right." But I really love him, and I will miss him for the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
My name is Tim Weiner, and I'm the president of the Future Mrs. Weber Committee. So, Laura put me on the job. I guess what I'd like to say, I saw Nick just a few days before he passed away. I got a call from the family, and they said he was in the hospital, and if you want to see him, you should come up and see him. And so I booked a plane, and I got a hotel room and everything, and then Patrice called me and said, "Hey, he seems to be doing better. It's stabilizing, so you don't have to come up." I said, "I'm going to come up just in case," and as it turns out, he passed away just a few days later, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. What we talked about, though, was everyone in this room. And I've had a lot of people who have called me, and they've said, "God, I feel so lucky to have had Nick in my life, and I feel so fortunate to have had Nick in my life." And I just want to say on his behalf, he felt that way about everyone in this room. Like, the joy that you all brought to Nick is something we talked about all the time. And we talked about so many things that he would light up when he would remember, like, "Oh, I remember that time that, Weber and I did this," or "I remember that time that I saw, whatever," and it just filled him with so much joy. So I feel like just on his behalf, I want to say thank you for everything that you gave to Nick.
So I love Nick. Yeah, we all love Nick. Can't say it enough, but just a couple things. He participated with student life in a way that, aside from being the first adult family member that wasn't my immediate family, right, away from home. He's now my uncle, but he's also, we did a play right here in St. Antonians and the others, and we cast him in the play, and he was in the play. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern did it, and so he was a trooper. He played along. And afterwards, and he'd always come by the dorm, the lounge, and we'd all be talking late at night, and he'd just join in, and we'd talk, and just like, he wanted to be part of the student life. And the other thing is afterwards, I came back to visit, he'd say, "Your class was the best class." And I'm sure he'd probably say that to everyone, but it really made me feel like you were just special, and that was really valuable.
My name is Chris Peoples, and I'm an interloper from Crown. I'm Crown 70, and I worked for 3 years at the college office when I was here, and my boss was Peggy Vecchione. And I got to know Nick through Peggy. And even after I graduated from Santa Cruz, I couldn't separate myself from this place, so I came back all the time. And I would always come down and find Nick and talk to him. And as everybody has said, he was this wonderful adult presence who would just talk and talk and talk, and he made sense. I know about that scar on his arm. He got, because I remember when Peggy totally freaked out about it, he had an accident with a chainsaw and almost took his arm off. But he was a great guy.
Hi, I'm Scott Kendig, class of 92-3. I'm not really sure anymore. I had kind of a checkered academic career, and Nick was fairly instrumental in making sure that I got to stay on campus for the time that I did. I had taken a leave from Stevenson that they suggested I take after my first year, and that was the year that I was a thorn in Mike Weber's side. Then anyway, I took a leave and I came back, and they put me in dorm 8 after, it was during winter quarter, it was right after break. I moved in, and I immediately saw that my roommate, who I hadn't met yet, and I probably wouldn't get along, he had books that I didn't think were my cup of tea. He had the flag of the Imperial German Navy hanging up on the wall. So needless to say, I didn't think things were going to go that way. So I did some things with the girl that I was dating at the time, who I was later to marry. We kind of trashed the room a little bit. There were champagne bottles, and there were undergarments, and there were things. And then when my roommate came back to meet me, he came in with his parents. And there I was, kind of a state of undress, with this girl that I was later to marry. And, needless to say, the roommate and his parents were shocked. After we made our introductions, they did a quick 180, went out the door. Anyway, I ran into Nick about an hour and a half after that happened. Me and my girl had gone to grab some breakfast or lunch or whatever we were eating at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I came back and Nick was there in my room and my roommate's stuff was gone. And I said, Nick, what the hell happened? He said, well, he and his parents came to me and he said, you gotta get that guy out of his room. That kid's a bad influence on my son. And Nick said, fuck him, you can't tell me what to do. At that moment, became my hero, my son. And forever after, when somebody would need a break, whether it was one of my kids or when I was a chef, as a line cook or a prep cook, somebody that would screw up and I would catch them, I would use Nick's words and I would say, hey asshole, what are you doing? Give them a chance to do right again. More often than not, that belief in them paid dividends. It's Nick's belief in me. So, Nick, God rest your soul. I miss you, bastard.
My name is Brian Marshall, and I graduated in '92. And like many stories, this is a story about second chances. About the third day I was at Santa Cruz as a first-year student, literally the third day, so first year orientation, was over. Some friends and I, our new friends, were sitting in a dorm room, and I was relatively naive. My father had been a US Navy pilot, and it's been 30 years in the Navy, and his last tour of duty, he was the XO of the Naval Drug Rehabilitation Center in Miramar, California. So when I was in high school, my father spent every day of my life going, are you high? Are you stoned right now? Needless to say, when I got here, so these new friends and I were sitting in a circle on the floor, and they were introducing me to something I didn't know about. It was called a bong. It was my turn, and I snarfed the bong. And if you don't know what that is, don't do it. At that moment, Nick Vecchione walked by the open door. Hey, asshole. A year later, it was the last day of my second year. I think finals were over, but I don't quite remember. And someone had scored some really, really nice enhanced weed, I guess. This makes me sound like I'm a huge stoner, which I'm not, but I was having a religious experience listening to The Who late at night. Suddenly there's a pounding on the door, and Nick Vecchione is there. Hey asshole, what are you doing? It's really late, and some people still have work to do. So, oh man, I'm really sorry, but I was seeing around the corner the music, and I just couldn't. What made it worse was I had just been selected to be an RA the following day. And I don't know if it still works this way, but somewhere during your RA year, you have like a mid-year check-in and an evaluation. Your dorm evaluates you. And my co-RA and I go to the meeting. It was the college administrative officer, I think they called her, and Nick. And we go through all the evaluations, and we kind of thought it was a formality, but they're like, you guys are doing a really great job, your dorm really like you, blah, 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 blah. And finally, and I think this is the moment I'm most proud of in my career at Stevenson, Nick looked at me and goes, you know, I thought you were an asshole, but you turned out all right. So thank you, Nick, for all the second chances. He was a special person, and I'll miss him. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I didn't have the experience of Nick having a lot of words for me, but the words he did have were really impactful. And mine is also a story of second chances. My dad died when I was 16. I'm in the class of 1980. I transferred here as a junior, and I always would see Nick around. And in a way, he kind of became this father figure, but at a distance. While I was here, I was working on my studies, which were kind of the study of consciousness, and I was studying the realm of psychedelics and meditation as psychological systems. So of course I had to do some research. And I was quite into meditation, and then I was quite into mushrooms. And the second to the last day of the last quarter of my junior year, my best friend from next door wasn't going to be coming back, so we decided we'd do one last trip. And in those circumstances, needless to say, it wasn't a good one. But being the researcher that I was, I knew that niacin could bring me down like that. I've never taken niacin, but I had convinced Tim and I that we should both come down right now. So we took niacin. Little did I know that it expands your blood vessels and makes you think you're dying and you turn bright red. And next thing you know, the firemen were in the door. My pot plants were hanging upside down in my closet, drying out, because I had wanted to harvest before the end of the quarter. And off I go to the hospital. And in the ER, of course, what did you take? What are you doing? Oh, I thought it was vitamin C, and I thought I was getting a cold and was going to take more, and it turned out to be niacin, and I don't know what happened. Well, you're lying. Well, no, I really thought it was vitamin C, So they gave me what I think was some Xanax, and I calmed down, and everything was good. I walked out of the ER thinking, how am I going to get back up to campus? And there was a VW bug. And there was Nick in the car. He said, get in. I got in, and he's not saying anything, driving, not saying anything, driving. And then he starts in on a parable of the student he once had who took the wrong path. But that over time they straightened out. And then he said, you know what? He said, I don't write very well. And it's a good thing, because none of this is going to get written down. And I said, thank you. So I came back, did straighten out my act, got much more into meditation, much less into psychedelics, and graduated in 1980. And the next time I was here was 1996, when my nephew was graduating from Stevenson. And I was a later in life mom, and I had just had my son. So my son was 5 months old at Andy's graduation. So he graduated down there. I walked back up because I was, wanted to reminisce, and he was standing there, but Nick. And I went up to him and, said, oh, Nick, I started saying, I'm Sally. He looks at me and goes, I know who you are. He said, you did it. Good job. And so, being like a father figure, it was kind of like the approval of my father that I never got. And it also helped me in my dealing with my son and in giving him second chances and then acknowledging when he did get it right. So, I miss you, Nick, and rest in peace.
I'm just going to be real brief. I'm wearing these dark glasses because I somehow was under the mistaken impression that Nick was going to be interred next to Socrates the cat in front of the coffee house. But I was here from 76 to 79. And at some point Nick asked me to be an RA down in dorm 6. I don't know why. But one of the most important things that ever happened to me, I graduated and I was still hanging out trying to figure out whether I was going to do what Rick Gordon told me to do, which was go to law school and get a job. And I was dating a gal who was working in the college office, Sue's house, and we were down on Pacific. We went into United Cigar and said hi to Nick. And he pulled me aside, took the cigar out of his mouth, and all of a sudden he got really serious and he said, marry her. And Nick, I did. We're here today, 34 years later. Thank you.
I got here in 81 and I graduated, I think, in 86. But I have just a few memories of Nick. One of the really strongest ones, though, is I don't remember the woman's name who was talking about the feeling of safety that he conveyed to people. Not so much in words, but just his presence and his demeanor. And I remember when I was here on campus, I think it was the storm of '83. There was a really big storm happening, and you know, we're the city on the hill, so when the lights went off, we were all kind of trapped here on campus. And we all thought it was really cool because classes were canceled, and I was having, I remember we were all kind of jammed into a friend of mine, Julie's, or somebody's dorm room, and we were all just kind of hanging out, the record players going, and all of a sudden the lights went out, and the music died down, and I went, woo, and it was all crazy. But when it started being serious, because we're all here, and it was right before classes were to begin in the winter, and so, you know, we're eating in the dining hall off paper plates because you can't wash the dishes, because, you know, and I remember when we were here for like 2 or 3 days, and but Nick had come into, we were living in Casa Cava, and he had come into the lounge and was kind of telling us all about the water shortage, basically, that we weren't supposed to be flushing as much, and we weren't supposed to be washing our clothes, and also meant that we weren't supposed to be taking as many showers, or as long showers, and just all the water, you know, shortage problems. And I think that at that time I started to get a little scared, because I didn't know like what that meant. But I remember when Nick was telling us about all that feeling of safety, that we were all going to kind of still be okay, that it was going to be all right. And I think right soon afterwards, we all just kind of had this mad egress, because people had to just basically get off campus and go somewhere. People, you know, some people lived in Europe and didn't have families, and so we were like, you know, 7 people in the car driving down, you know, the highway trying to get to places to stay. But I always just remember him coming in and saying, it's going to be okay, you're going to be okay, we're still going to be here, we'll be here when you come back. And I just remember that safety feeling of Nick around, and the smell of cigar smoke, the hat, the glasses. And also, I just wanted to say that I think that was probably the first time when I realized that pets can take on the demeanor of their owners. Because Socrates was such a curmudgeon cat, and he had such a crazy personality, and he didn't like to be petted a lot, but you always kind of loved him anyway. And I think that was kind of Nick, and I just really appreciated him being here. Thank you.